The night is deep, and the clouds cover the moonlight, and the entire village seems to be shrouded in the silence of death. When Alex walked to the pond, an inexplicable chill struck, which made him subconsciously tighten the collar. The edge of the pond is tall, and the water surface is glowing with a dark luster under the weak moonlight. Suddenly, a dark shadow rose slowly from the bottom of the water. It was huge and distorted, as if it was condensed by countless dark elements. The black shadow was moved and gradually expanded on the surface, revealing a creepy face. The face was pale and swollen, his eyes were deep, and the cold light flashed in the pupils of the black hole. Its mouth opened, exposing sharp teeth and rotten tongue. The entire face exudes a breath of death, as if the undead crawling out of hell. Alex screamed in horror, turned and ran. However, the dark shadow did not seem to have intended to let him go, and it made a stern crying and laughing, pursuing him. He felt a cold wind blowing through his neck, as if something was close to him. He ran desperately, and the sound of heartbeat echoed in his ears, and fear made him unable to breathe. He ran himself, and his heartbeat echoed in his ears. Suddenly, he felt a cold wind blowing through his neck, as if something was posted behind him. He didn't dare to look back, just rushing forward desperately. Finally, he saw the light in front of his house, and he yelled at the door ecstatic. Linda rushed to the sound and saw his embarrassment. She asked him in horror what happened. He trembled his lips and told her his horror experience just now. She hugged him tightly and comforted him that it was just a nightmare. Mom and John changed their faces after listening, and they immediately went out with a flashlight to check. However, they found nothing. The pond was quiet, only the moonlight sprinkled on the water, and a layer of mysterious silvered light was glowing. Early the next morning, Alex heard a shocking news: Zhang Hong's grandma died. She did not die in the pond, but died in her home. The news caused the entire village to be silent and sad. However, Alex knows that it is not a dream. The horrible black shadow and Zhang Hong's grandma had an inexplicable connection. He can't explain it all. He can't forget the pale and horrible face, and those empty and deep eyes. That night's experience will always stay in his memory and become a shadow he can't get rid of. Whenever Alex walks on the road at night, he feels an inexplicable fear and anxiety. He knows that the black shadow has been waiting for the opportunity to appear again in the dark. The only thing he can do is to keep vigilance and pray that it will never appear again. Whenever he thinks of that horrible dark shadow, he feels a chill, as if it was behind him, ready to rush to him at any time. That night, the moon was blocked by a thick cloud, and the night was thicker as if it could devour everything. I walked alone on the road to home. I have walked countless times in this road, and I have been familiar with them. However, everything that night seemed weird. When I walked to a barren cemetery, a strong sense of anxiety suddenly rose in my heart. The weeds in the cemetery were clustered, and several tombstones stood skewed in the darkness, as if they were telling me something. I couldn't help speeding up, trying to leave this gloomy place as soon as possible. At this moment, my feet slipped and accidentally kicked a hard thing. I bent down and reached out and found a tombstone. I was shocked and got up quickly, but suddenly felt a chill, as if something was staring at me tightly. I looked up and saw a few words engraved on the tombstone, but the light was too dark and I couldn't see what it was written. Just as I tried to read those words, there was a strange voice in the cemetery, as if someone was whispering or crying. I took a few steps back in panic, and my heart began to jump. As I was about to turn around, I suddenly saw a light appearing on the tombstone. The light gradually expanded and became a shadow of a person. The shadow gradually became clear and turned into a woman wearing costume. She lowered her head and couldn't see her appearance, but I could feel that she exuded a sad atmosphere. I don't know what happened, scared in place. The woman raised her head slowly and looked at me. Her eyes were empty and deep, as if she could see through everything. I screamed, turned, and ran. However, the woman's voice echoed in my ear. Why do you disturb my tranquility?" I ran desperately, as if something was chasing me tightly. Finally, I saw the light in front of my house, and I yelled at the door, ecstatic. My mother heard my voice and hurriedly opened the door to greet me. Seeing me panicked, she asked me in horror what happened. I gasped and told her my horror experience in the cemetery just now. She hugged me tightly and comforted me that it was just a nightmare. However, I know that it is not a dream. The woman's shadow has been lingering in my mind. Since then, whenever I walk on the road at night, I will feel an inexplicable fear and anxiety. I know that woman has been waiting for the opportunity to appear again in the dark. The only thing I can do is to keep vigilance and pray that it will never appear again. This story made me feel the feeling of terror and thrilling. Whenever I think of the light on the woman and the tombstone, I feel a chilling, as if they are behind me, ready to rush to me at any time. Since then, I try to avoid going out alone at night, especially on the road that once brought me endless fear. However, life is always full of accidents. One night, the bulb at home suddenly went out, and my mother asked me to buy a new one nearby. Although I was unwilling in my heart, I still embarked on the familiar and strange path. The moon is still blocked by the dark clouds, and the night is deeper. I held the flashlight in my hand nervously, and the light of the flashlight looked extremely weak in the darkness. When I walked to the cemetery, I couldn't help feeling my heartbeat accelerated, and my fear shrouded me again. I carefully bypassed those tombstones and try not to touch them. However, just when I was about to get out of the cemetery, I suddenly heard a low cry. I looked around in horror, but I didn't see anything. The crying sound sounded again, and it was clearer. I swallowed nervously, trying to find the source of the sound. The light of the flashlight was swept through the tombstone. I suddenly found that a new word appeared on the tombstone I had kicked. Why bother my peace again? My heart tightened, and the fear of fear suddenly soared. At this time, the woman in the costume appeared again in front of me. Her eyes were still empty and deep, but this time her face had a hint of anger. She walked slowly to me. Her voice was cold and majestic. "Why do you disturb me again? Don't you know that this is my sleeping place? No offense." However, women don't seem to plan to listen to my explanation. She reached out her hand. Her fingertips were sharp. I screamed and turned and ran, and the woman chased her. I felt her fingers passing my back, and a drama came. I ran myself, and finally saw the light in front of the house. I yelled at the door ecstatically, and my mother quickly opened the door to let me enter. Seeing my deep wound and a frightened expression on my back, she quickly helped me deal with the wound and asked me what happened. I trembled my lips and told her my horror experience just now. After listening, my mother's face changed. Her face tightly and comforted me and said that it was just an illusion that was the fear in my heart. However, I know that it is not an illusion nor a fear, that the woman is a real existence. She once. Since then I dare not go out alone at night. Whenever I hear someone mentioning the cemetery, I felt inexplicable fear and anxiety. I know that the woman has been waiting for the opportunity to appear again in the dark, and the only thing I can do is to pray that she will never meet her again. Over time, the wound on my back gradually healed, but the trauma in my heart was difficult to smooth. Whenever I see the tombstone or think of the woman's face, I feel a deep fear. This kind of fear is like a shadow, making me unable to get rid of it. One day, a mysterious old man came in the village. He claims to be an exorcist who can drive away all kinds of evil spirits and ghosts. When my mother heard this news, he immediately invited him to come home. The old man looked very kind, but his eyes revealed a trace of depth and majesty, as if he could see through people's heart. After hearing my experience, he was silent for a long time. Then he said slowly, "The woman you met was a soul that could not rest in peace because of resentment. She suffered great pain and grievances during her lifetime, so she turned into a strong ghost after death, looking for opportunities to disturb her, the peaceful person. When I heard this, I couldn't help feeling a chill. The old man continued, "To solve this problem, the woman's grievances must be found so that she can rest in peace. Are you willing to find the answer with me?" I looked at the old man's eyes and nodded firmly. The old man took me to the cemetery. He let me close my eyes and then read a mysterious spell. I felt a fluttering feeling, as if my soul left my body. When I opened my eyes, I found myself standing in an ancient village. This village looks familiar, but is a little strange. I followed the steps of the old man and came to a dilapidated hut. The old man opened the door and we walked in. The scene in the house stunned me. A young woman was lying on the bed with a pale and embarrassed face, as if to endure great pain. I suddenly realized that this was the woman wearing a costume. I looked at her nervously and didn't know what to do. The old man walked to the bed, stroked the woman's hair gently, and said gently, "Children, we all know your grievances. Now, you can rest in peace." The woman opened her eyes slowly, and her eyes were full of gratitude and relief. She smiled slightly and closed her eyes. Her body gradually became transparent and eventually disappeared into the air. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back to the real world. The cemetery is still quiet, but I feel an inexplicable relaxation and peace. I know that the woman's soul has been restored. Although I overcome the fear, the experience still left a deep mark in my heart. I always have awe of the cemetery, and I cherish every moment of life in the moment. One day, the legend of that cemetery aroused the interest of a historian. He came to the village and wanted to explore the hidden secrets behind the cemetery. By consulting the orally of ancient books and local residents, he found that the owner of the cemetery was an ancient princess who was forced to commit suicide because of being framed. The cause of the princess's death caused a wide range of disputes, and people began to question the historical records at the time. As a result, some volunteers formed an archaeological team that planned to dig in the cemetery to find more clues about Princess. After learning this news, I joined the archaeological team without hesitation. I want to know the real history of that woman, and I hope to wash her grievances. The process of archaeological excavation is long and difficult, but everyone is in awe. Finally, we found a stone monument when it was excavated. The monument is engraved with the princess's name and life deeds, and the truth she is framed. It turned out that the princess was framed by a palace girl who was jealous and talented, and her death was also a case of injustice. The discovery shocked the entire village and attracted widespread concern. Historians re-examined that history and finally restored the reputation of the princess. The princess's grievances could be Zhao Shui, and her soul was really rest. Since then, the cemetery has never experienced any phenomenon. The villagers also began to re-examine their history and culture and cherish and protect this land. And I have grown a lot because of this experience. I learned to face the inner fear bravely, and I also know how to cherish the current life. I know that every life is worthy of respect and care, whether they have existed in the